Hello, Smart Money Tree podcast listeners, and welcome to this week's show. My name is Kirk Chisholm, and I will be one of your hosts today. So today we are doing our 2022 year-end wrap-up, and we have our very own Megan Gorman joining us. Hey, Megan.
Hi, Kirk. Hi, Doug. How you guys doing today?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Doing well.
And we also have our very own Doug Heagren. Hey, Doug.
Hey, Kirk. Hey, Megan. Good to see you guys again. Happy New Year to you, and hope you had a nice holiday.
Happy New Year. Yeah.
And it's very wet here in San Francisco. So I know, Doug, you're in Minnesota.
Yep. Kids
and
got
Kirk,
another.
You're in Boston. So you must think us West Coasters are, softies because we're like flailing in the rain.
Well, considering the kids at 5:30 this morning, I got a notice that there was going to be a 2-hour delay for school due to sleet, and that got updated around 6:30 a.m. to a full day off because of sleet. So we do think you're softies, out there. Although I think you're getting hit with like 5 cyclones all at once. So I don't know. That's a different story. I'm talking to people out in California who have lots of flooded basements, and that's never fun.
Yeah, that's the big challenge out here is most people are now finding that their roof was not as good as they thought it was. So
it's funny when it doesn't rain, how important that roof is.
It's true. It's really true. So
well, hopefully the frozen bomb cyclone with sprinkles on top doesn't get too bad out there in California, Megan.
Hopefully, and then we'll go back to 70 and sunny every day.
I'll take under 30, so my winter pool in my backyard freezes over and I can start skating on again. So
nice.
But so let's just dive right in. So 2022 was I think there are a lot of words I could use for it, but none of them that are appropriate for this show. So let's just call it an interesting year that surprised just about everybody in any shape or form on the spectrum. But I want to kind of dive right in and get opinions from each of our panelists here on the year, because I certainly have mine. I think it was a slow motion train wreck. But Megan, what were some of your thoughts from 2022?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really fascinating year. It's one of those years that we'll talk about like we do about 2008 and 9 and about, the 2002 recession. So just a couple of little stats out there, because I think, everyone's trying to put context on what has been a recalibration of the market. So some of the things that I thought were interesting is the all-time high of the market last year was on January 3rd, the first trading day of the year. And if you look at the market, there were 219 days where the market moved up or down more than 1%, right? So that type of volatility is unbelievable. And I can tell you, and it's funny, before the show, we were all talking about we're all close in age. When the three of us first started in the industry, I don't think we saw this type of volatility. It just wasn't possible. But other things sort of happened out there. Energy was the second year in a row. Energy was the best performing global equity sector. We had 9% peak year over year CPI for inflation, and 1.46 trillion was wiped out in crypto market cap since the start of 2022. So it was a wild year. And so what you're hearing a lot of, and I think you guys are probably saying the same thing to clients, is that it was a year of recalibration, right? The Fed came in, and in the quickest, amount of time, looking back in the Fed's history, they moved interest rates up. And it's changed everything from housing to how the bond market reacted and where yields are today to basically equities, and cash is now an asset class. And so the last thing I'll say is, what we're talking a lot to clients about is last year went from a TINA market to a TARA market. TINA and TARA. TINA, there is no alternative to equities. So for the past decade, if you wanted yield, you weren't going to get it in your bank accounts. You weren't really going to get it in bonds. You had to go into the equity market. Now we're in a TARA market. There are reasonable alternatives to equities. So as tough as last year was, this resetting is giving us really different opportunities. And to some degree, this is a more exciting time to be in the markets than we were 12 months ago. But I'd love to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, that's great, Megan. So Doug, what are your thoughts?
Well, I like going back to what Megan said, like, have we ever seen this type of volatility? I was actually looking at a chart that JP Morgan puts out going back to 1980. And from 1980 to 2000, so we have what we call intra-year declines and calendar year returns. So intra-year declines is basically how far does the market fall in 1 year, but then what does the actual calendar year look like, end up being at the end of the year, right? So people talk about this all the time, that it's very, that is a lot of, that there's a little bit of volatility, that it's not uncommon to have a negative return in the market at some point intra-year, but yet 90% of the time, 85% plus, we end up with a positive return on the market. So if we go back to between 1980 and 2000, there was only 2 years where there was an intra-year decline that exceeded 20%. And actually, one of them was right at 20%. One of them, minus 34, was back in 1987. We all know Black Tuesday. And then it happened again in 1990. Well, since 2000, we have exceeded 20%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times just since 2000. And one of those times that I didn't count was 19% intra-year decline. And 5 of those times that it hit since 2000, the market intra-year decline was over 30%. And we had 2008 where it was down 49%. So when you talk about not seeing volatility in our lifetime, we've always seen a teeny bit of bouncing, but not to the extremities that we're seeing in terms of massive movements intra-year, where you're going down double-digit percent on almost a regular basis now, where prior to 1995 to 2000, most years, the maximum that you saw an intra-year decline was 7, 8, 9%. Now it's very common to see 10 to 20% on a regular basis. So no question that there's been a change and a shift there that's becoming the new normal. The other thing too is, and if we look at what actually occurred in terms of year-end calendar year returns, while most of those years we had some volatility, there was only about 7 years where we ended up negative. Right after 1980, 1990, obviously the dot-com bust in 2000. There's 3 years there that were negative. 2008, I think 2018, and then obviously 2022, where the market was down a maximum of 25%, but ended the year down 19. So it never came back. And I think a lot of that has to do with the peak was on January 3rd, like you mentioned. So it just was a constant slide. And that really matters, because when you start looking ahead to what we have to get back, people talk about just wait, right? Just let the markets come back. You'll be fine. They will eventually come back. That's true. But right now, the return you need to get to a January 2022 peak of 47.97 in the S&P, we need a 26.7% return. We're going to have to get an average of 13.6% just to get back over 2 years. I mean, if you want to get back over 5 years, we have to have 6.4% a year just to get back to where we were. And when we start to look at what that means, and again, Benjamin Franklin has a saying that lost time effectively is lost forever. It matters where your money is, and it matters where your money is before we went into the slide. And we've come, low interest rates have created this idea that you can just passively invest. And I think those times are changing. Like Megan said, there's a lot of new things that are coming out of this. Go back to the 1980s when bond markets were paying 18 to 20%. We haven't seen that. That's put a lot of pressure on trying to figure out where to get return. And strictly, people have tried to get that in the markets. But I think diversification going forward is actually going to be more effective. I think active management is going to be more effective. As you've said before, Kirk, we're in a paradigm shift. And I think that with what's going on with the Fed and what we've been over the last 15 to 20 years is going to create a lot of changes over the next 15 to 20.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, this is one of the reasons why we started this early. We started talking about this in late 21 and especially in early 22. This paradigm shift is, the paradigm shift is enormous, and it's really hard to get your arms around. And the further we go down this path, the more real it's going to feel. But initially, people didn't believe it. As Megan said, I love that term, the recalibration. I think it's a great explanation for what was going on. Is we had a year where people had expectations of low interest rates, equities go to the moon, real estate goes to the moon. There's no risk. If something goes down, it'll bounce back. I mean, look at 2020. When we look at investing, we look at it as there's volatility and there's risk. Volatility, well, risk is a permanent impairment of capital. It's like investing in a company that goes bankrupt. Volatility is the fluctuations you see in any given day, right? As Megan said, we've had 219 days of over 1% movements in the market. That's volatility, right? The only way you can manage volatility is diversification, right? And that's assuming that you need to manage volatility. For some people, it feels better to manage it, but if you were Warren Buffett, you wouldn't worry about that. But the point is you worry about risk, you don't worry about volatility. 2020 should have been risk. It ended up being volatility because it was down 33% on the S&P and ended up, was it like 9 or 10% for that year? It was crazy. That's volatility. That shouldn't have happened. The whole world shut down. Everybody's, locked up in their house. And yet, the index ended up for the year.
Well, hold on, Kirk. Wait, but let's put a caveat on that. It probably shouldn't happen unless they pumped a ton of money into the system, right?
Correct. But I was just talking about the fundamentals. Like if you look at it practically, like, hey, this company hasn't made revenues in the last 6 months because they had to lay everybody,
right. I agree with
restaurant
that,
company, right? So, but yeah, totally agree, Megan. But the point is conceptually, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter, right? The markets rarely make sense, right? That's as they say in the short term, it's a voting mechanism. In the long term, it's a weighing mechanism, I think is the term. And but I think where I'm going with this is that there's a difference between risk and volatility, and most people have had a calibration of volatility where you just buy the dip, everything always goes up, you don't have to worry about it. If it goes down, it'll come back, or better yet, buy the dip. And we've had a recalibration of virtually everything you think you know about finance is now different because interest rates are going up. And it's not that things are different, it's that it's been 40 years since interest rates have been going up, right? It's been since 1980 that this has happened last. And most people haven't been around since then. Most people haven't been around for the last 20 years or 10 years. I mean, we have a segment of investors, especially the younger ones, that have been around for 2 years. And, hey, I bought in at the bottom of COVID and I made 100%. It's really easy. And I think the recalibration is not just in the markets, but it's also in the way people think about the markets. And that's really the important thing. So if I look at like the yield curve in the end of 2021 compared to where it was the end of 2022, you're looking at, like a short term, like a 3-month, you're looking at a 4.75% difference. That's a huge rise in 1 year. So, the interest rates rose at what they would say in Spaceballs, ludicrous speed. It's for those of you who are extras know what I'm talking about. Those of you who didn't look at the movie, it's kind of funny. But anyway, so interest rates rose enormously, and it's not the fastest, despite all that narratives that go out there with those pictures that show, oh, it's the fastest ever in modern times, in air quotes. Yeah, since 1979, when it went up like 10% or 11% a year, which is obviously faster. So there's a lot of changes this year, and I think the big one, as was already pointed out, was the recalibration. And I think people are on the boat, at least for the recalibration, but I don't think people are driving it yet. I think people are still kind of like, I'm not really sure. I think it's going to go back. Maybe I should buy some tech here. It's down 75%. It's probably some good bargains. And so I think people are still in the old mindset, but they're still a little cautious. And I think
Kirk,
it might take, hold on, I'm just finishing up. It'll probably take a few years, maybe another 2 years before people really get it, because this is why we beat this dead horse all the time, because it's not something that is easy to turn the ship around. It's a big mental shift, and change is hard. So we try to beat it in your head in the show, because once you get it, it's going to be crystal clear, and it's going to still be foggy for everybody else. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, I just want to tack on to what you were talking about, the generational lack of awareness. It's kind of something that parents get, are told, although whether we do that well or not, is that you kind of have to let your kids make their own mistakes, right? If you tell them what to do, they don't want to listen. Well, you were talking about how long it's been since interest rates went up. There's actually another chart that JP Morgan puts out that talks about the consumer price index and core consumer price index and headline consumer price index. Now, if we take a look at core consumer price index, the last time that we had in inflation, percentage change versus prior year seasonally adjusted, the last time it was positive above 3.3% was 1990. That's 30 years. That's 32 years ago. Now, there was a moment that it occurred right before the recession, the crash of 2008, where headline CPI popped just above that, a little bit in 2005 and a little bit in 2007. But core CPI hasn't been above 3.5%. As a matter of fact, it hasn't been above 3% since 1992 or 1993. So when we talk about trying to do the same thing over and over, what's the definition of insanity? Do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. We are in a situation where if you do the same thing over and over the way it's been done the last 30 years and you expect to get the same results, you're going to get burned, because we are now in a completely different situation.
Hey, Doug, did you hear? We're giving away free money. Well, I'll tell you about it in a minute, but before I do, there's a saying in the mining community, well, precious metals mining, that is. The saying is that if you want the best deals, you have to be in the room. Now, you're probably thinking, what does it mean to be in the room? Well, I'll tell you. Being in the room means that you're on the short list of people who get invited to be a part of the best deals. These are the deals that most investors will never have access to. You mean like IPOs? Nope, IPOs are chump change. Those are for retail investors, small potatoes. That's nothing compared to these deals. These deals would have you salivating to get access to them. Once you know they exist, you will never look at investing the same way again. I almost don't want to even tell you that they exist because it will ruin your thinking of how the investing world really works. Now, you might be excited that these deals exist, but you only have access to the deals if you're an insider, or in the room as they call it. Now, as loyal listeners to the show, I'm going to give you a chance to be in the room. Money Tree Investing Podcast has created the Insiders Club. This is a community of our show's members who are loyal listeners of the show and want to get more out of their investing experience. Being a part of the Insiders Club gives you insider status for upcoming events and webinars, discounts, free stuff and books, and influence on the future direction of the show. This is a great opportunity to join us as we expand our content and services. Oh, and did I mention free money? Yes, in the next few weeks, I'll be giving away free money to our members of the Insiders Club as my appreciation for listening to the show. Now, there's no cost to join the Insiders Club. Just go to moneytreepodcast.com/free money today to join the community. That's www.moneytreepodcast.com/free money. I hope to see you in the room. So now that we've kind of got that out of the way, I wanted to talk about some of the trends here, because 2022 was a dumpster fire, I guess you could call it. And I think a lot of people are glad it's over, but, is it over? So Megan, there were a lot of themes that happened in 2022 that people are talking about, like the 60-40 being dead, a lot of trends. So what are your thoughts on the trends for 60-40 and 2022?
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, first of all, I think what's always interesting is we're always hearing these academic themed questions run through the investment markets. I remember when I first got into the industry in 2002, the big debate was, had the US markets and the overseas markets decoupled? Do you guys remember that, the whole debate, right? Yep. And then we got to 2009 and was like, oh no, we are not decoupled. We are all tied together, right? So you hear these debates, and the debate we've been consistently hearing is the 60-40 allocation dead? And just to be clear, right? Not every investor should be 60% stocks, 40% bonds, right? But a large number of investors do. And so there's been this debate like, well, if you stay in that asset allocation, you will have the next decade will be a quote unquote lost decade. So portfolios are a mix of art and science, right? And there's some certain philosophical pillars. And even on this show today, I've heard both of you mention them, right? When you're building portfolios, you focus on things like diversification, right? History, time horizon, consistency. And so why that's important to have these pillars is when we're in these moments, what's really amazing is today we have 100 years of data to go and look back on. And it's really important, and this is in the JP Morgan report you brought up, I see it at Schwab, at Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, is that's often a starting point to understand what's really happening from a larger time horizon. And if you look at the data on a 60-40 portfolio, since 1926, it has generated positive returns on a rolling 12-month basis 80% of the time. Now, that feels pretty good when you're in the 80% of the time. When you're not, it feels really challenging, right? So when you get into these sort of situations like a 2022, and there's these thematic things like, is the 60-40 dead? You need to go back and look at history and look at history from a time horizon, right? And you have to keep in mind that one thing that is true of a lot of investors, and we see it, the three of us see it all the time in our businesses, is investors are not consistent, right? So when I give you this data that 80% of the time since 1926, there's been rolling positive returns, that's assuming an investor's behavior is consistent, right? And what often happens in markets like 2022 is that investors panic and they start to become inconsistent. The three of us have all gotten calls with people saying last year, should I make changes to my allocation? Should I go move everything to gold, right? All of those things. And so in order to be diversified, focus on consistency of your asset allocation, staying on target, not making sudden moves. And that's important because Jerome Powell just said, basically, no one knows if we're going to go into a recession. And you've got some economists saying it's a 70% chance. There's an economist over at Goldman that gives it a 35% chance, but you can't move your portfolio around trying to guess. So be consistent with your asset allocation. And remember this, what happened last year with stocks and bonds, where both were down, that has only happened 2% of the time since 1926, 1929, 1970, and 2022. But 67% of the time, there were positive returns in both stocks and bonds over that time period. So focus on the key pillars. And I'd love to know with you guys how you see the key pillars, because we talk about it all the time, but we talk about it like everybody knows the pillars.
Go ahead, Doug. You can start.
Well, maybe I just want to make sure I understand the question on those pillars. So, are you talking about like the pillars of how to build the portfolio, the pillars that are kind of leading into what's going to touch? Yeah,
I think with the investment debate, so I don't believe the 60-40 is dead. And I don't believe the 60-40 dead, because if you look at the pillars of how you build a portfolio, of diversification, looking back at history, consistency, and time horizon, you'll see in those pillars that, yeah, there are going to be challenging years in a 60-40, but ultimately, based on the data we have, a 60-40 is a good allocation for those clients it's appropriate for.
Gotcha. I think
how do you take clients through looking at these things when they're saying, is the 60-40 dead? Is that...
Yeah, that helps me. That helps.
Sorry,
yeah,
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I apologize.
Yeah, no, that's helpful, because I mean, I think when, unfortunately, in this industry is complex beyond what it needs to be for most people, right? You know, we talk about the legalese, we talk about the regulations, I mean, shoot, you do any kind of investing and they want to send you a 500-page booklet about all the things that could go wrong and try to talk you out of it, right? I mean, so it comes to a point in which, you know, there's this balance between what do I do and freezing up and being paralyzed and doing something. Why the 60-40 works. And there's some other arguments out there for, like, you know, the permanent portfolio, which is kind of another way of having your assets in kind of a simplified, easy to understand. If I'm going to do anything, it gives me a starting point, right? And so the reason the 60-40 works out well is because it comes down to the basic premise of correlation. You know, so what happens is when you get into, you know, when you get into a really good market, stocks are going to take off. And what's going to happen is that 40% fixed income is probably going to be less sexy, right? People aren't going to want to be in it. They're going to see the return on it. But all of a sudden, you start to see that, the things turn, and maybe it's not a great environment for stocks and equities in general. And all of a sudden, what happens? People fly to safety. It happens this way every time. We're creatures of habit. We're emotional. And so all of a sudden, where can you not lose money? Well, historically, it has tended to be fixed income, because that is a place where, hey, maybe it might be impacted a little bit, but it's not going to fall at, double-digit percent the way equities does. And so why it works, it goes back to what I've said in plenty of conversations, is that if you don't hate something about your portfolio, you're not diversified, right? So you're going to dislike something at a time. A 60-40, you're going to be very unhappy with the 60% that's declining, but the 40%, you're going to love at that point. When times are good, you're going to love the 60 and be upset that you didn't have more, right? That you didn't have the 40. But from a simplification standpoint, you can't chase returns. So it allows the opportunity that, if we go back to the principles of rebalancing, right? What's the concept behind rebalancing? It is basically buying low and selling high without overthinking it, right? So if all of a sudden we have a market that's, credible, let's say the equities double, your 60% portfolio of equities is going to, in theory, double, and your 40% fixed income is going to, in theory, half, although it's not in a direct relationship. Well, if you go back into annual rebalancing, you're going to see that your portfolio that was 60-40 might be now 90-10. Okay, this is an extreme situation. So just by rebalancing, you're going to be automatically pulling off that 30% appreciation of equities that are expensive, hence selling high. And you're going to reallocate that to the 40 that through to 10, bringing you back to 40, hence buying low. And in theory, over time, this does provide a basic fundamental way of at least being able to take advantage of pulling risk out of the markets and giving yourself an increase of ownership of things that are diminished on return. And what it really comes down to, as I said, it goes back to the concept of correlation. Okay, that ideally you want to have a portfolio that has things that do well together, that are basically, when the elevator goes up, they all go up to some degree. They overperform to some degree. And you want to have things at all times that are going to also go the opposite direction. We call that negative correlation, that are going to potentially go down together, opposite of what that other elevator is doing. You also want to have things that are non-correlated. There's no pattern whatsoever. And Kirk and I talk about this all the time. Correlations change. It's hard to, correlation is not causation. But when I talk to clients about this, and again, if a client's going to do nothing and get no help, if you look back over the minimization of that volatility, a 60-40 tampers that down. Now, there are times that doesn't work, and we saw this in 2022. If all of a sudden we see a situation in which fixed income is directly attacked, and that's exactly what happened in 2022. When you raise interest rates, it is a direct, and actually probably of anything you could possibly hold, because we don't know what's going to happen with stocks next year, right? There's no way to know, because stocks to some degree are emotional. It's like, ooh, we think this company is going to do well. We think the international is going to do well. Let's put our money in it. Fixed income is actually one of the most predictable asset classes under certain circumstances, which that main circumstance is interest rate changes. You know exactly mathematically what will historically happen to fixed income when the government affects interest rates. And that's why going into 2022, fixed income, at least long-term fixed income, was a terrible place to be, because we knew that the instant they started raising interest rates, there'd be a direct negative attack on that. And when it's going to also make free money no longer free, that's going to affect equities too. Hence, a very, very difficult 2022 all around. And that's why a 60-40 just didn't work last year. But in the long run, if you're not going to give that active help, it's a good starting point. And a starting point is at least something, because any strategy is better than no strategy. I would argue that if you really want to have a good plan going forward with rising interest rates, with inflation, the other thing is the federal debt is as high as it's been since the late 40s. Okay. If you look at that as a percentage of GDP, that is after World War II. The government's going to have to do something, and nobody's going to be perfectly happy about this. So what does that mean? Well, there's different options, but one of those options is, guess what they did in the 1950s? They jacked tax rates up to over 94%. Okay. Do I think that's coming? My personal prediction is no, but I definitely think that taxes are something to look at. Although, by the way, I heard that there is a potential plan in the House right now that they're trying to propose eliminating income tax altogether, completely eliminated, which is counterintuitive to paying off debt. But, but again, it's going to make some people happy. Again, I don't think it's going to get through. But I think that if you think long-term and rationally, that's another thing we have to plan for in our diversification is tax diversification, because we have been in some of the lowest tax rates in history. The pendulums always swing. And if it swings back and you're doing things the old way, if you continue to do things the old way, and you think, well, I'm just going to put money in taxable accounts and tax deferral accounts and just simplify that, I think there's a chance you're going to get burned. So I go further than the 60-40 and those pillars and think that you got to diversify outside of just in what you're holding as an investment allocation. This is where I define asset allocation very differently. And asset allocation is actually holding things that are completely different. So you might have your investment portfolio of bonds and different types of fixed income and different types of stocks. But I also think that as interest rates go up, there's arguments to be said for how you look at real estate, how you look at precious metals, how you look at alternatives like crypto, how you look at cash value life insurance or annuities. There are benefits and there are challenges of all of them. And again, if there's something you don't like, if you like everything that you hold, you're probably not diversified. And I think that as we go into a paradigm shift, you're going to see a lot of challenges we haven't seen for 30 years that you better be looking at and preparing for. And if you're just looking at, well, that didn't do well over the last 10 years, that's a terrible way to do your asset allocation, because what we're going to be facing is going to be different.
Yeah. So I want to make one quick comment and then we're going to wrap it up in the interest of time here. With all these principles that we've been talking about today, the one thing you should remember is always ask why. So before you're going to do something, ask why. Oh, I'm going to do a 60-40. Why does a 60-40 work? Right? Maybe it's right, maybe it's not. If you don't ask yourself why, then you're not going to know why you shouldn't do it. Right? So 60-40 is 40% in bonds. Well, if bonds are losing value, they're no longer safe. So you have to ask yourself, is that the right thing for me? And so rather than just blindly using rules of thumb, which our industry and investors do all the time, which is part of the reason we do this show, is to help people, educate people so they're not going to blindly follow rules of thumb. And the rules of thumb are usually the things that get you, harmed, right? Like buy and hold. Well, buy and hold works in a bull market, doesn't work in a bear market, right? Or, cash is trash, as Ray Dalio said. Well, not necessarily. It's not necessarily if everything is going down 20%. So, just understand, don't just take things blindly. Think about why. Why does it work? Why does it not work? So I think if you do that, then a lot of this will be a lot clearer to you. And, in the next few years, certainly my prediction is that things are still going to be very volatile. That's not going to change as long as inflation and interest rates are high. My prediction is interest rates are probably going to go down for the near future, and then it'll probably pick back up in the latter part of this year. But, this is the bullwhip effect. There's a lot of reasons for it. Right now, the used car prices and home prices and oil prices have all been going down, which should depress the inflation numbers, but at some point that'll pick back up again. So just something to keep in mind. But as we kind of take us home here, Megan, final thoughts, and where can people find more about you?
Yeah. So, as you navigate 2023, obviously, focus on the fundamentals, but remember, no one knows what's going to happen. So there's a lot of big things to focus on. It's one of the big themes thematically will be, is there going to be a recession? Again, no one knows. But other risks out there for portfolios, just to keep in mind, is, things like the US-China relationship remaining uncertain. Kim Jong-un in North Korea, his postures towards missile testing. You're seeing Iran partner with Russia more. And on the US front, one of the things that people need to keep front of mind. This isn't a big election year, but come, late summer, we might have a debt ceiling crisis again. So there's a lot of wild things out there. They're going to have an impact on portfolios. So, keep focused on the long-term game. Keep focused on, what your portfolio is and being a consistent investor. And know that in moments of uncertainty, you can always look back at history. So I'm Megan Gorman. You can find me at Forbes.com/Megan Gorman. Kirk, thanks for having me on. Doug, great chatting with you.
Thanks for coming on, Megan. And Doug, final thoughts from you. Where can people find more about you?
Megan, I appreciate that you brought up the debt ceiling, because that could be again, that's always been a very contentious situation, and that's created some very volatile periods of time before. So that's definitely something to look forward towards in 2023. The other thing I think was a little bit telling is I think it was in Stockholm where they just were, but Chairman Powell was in Stockholm on Tuesday, and as the bond market are starting to see recession, and you start to look at rate cuts, he's been silent. By the way, this is the first time that Chairman Powell has been silent during this entire period of time since the interest rates have gone up and since we've come out of 2021. So it's telling by not saying anything, there may be some changes coming in the rhetoric from the Fed. The other thing that I wanted to say about this is you talked about cash being an asset class. Cash is an asset class, and it may not have been sexy over the last 10 years, and people say cash is trash, but guess what? Again, if you don't like something about what you're holding, you're not diversified, and having cash the last year actually was a rate of return against everything else. But this is where you need to think of the wealth you have as tanks. You've got a risk tank, you've got a safe tank. Most people aren't in balance. Most people have 90% of the money they have at risk. And the greatest wealth plans built was where people understand that you have to have balance between those tanks. And so if you do not have safe tank as full as your risk tank, you're in a situation where you have less flexibility, less options, less access to capital. And ultimately, that's the greatest point of stress for people financially. You want to learn more about me? I'm going to talk today. I think we got some business owners that are on today and that are listening. If we go into a recession, that's going to impact people in business. If you want, basically, you want to be able to have a business that works without you. Okay. You want to have a business that's built to face recession. The complexity takes the freedom away, takes time away, takes profitability away, creates stress for you and your team. There's a 9-step program where you can put your business on an automatic path in as little as 90 days, eliminate issues with time, team, money. And listen, it doesn't have to cost a lot. You want to find out more about how to have your business thrive without you? Go look us up at automaticbusinessmethod.com, automaticbusinessmethod.com. I'm Douglas Heagren. Thanks for having me, Kirk.
Yeah, thanks again for coming on, Doug, and Happy New Year to everybody. Hopefully we got a great start to 2023. Hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. We're going to have in store for you in this year on Money Tree Podcast. We're going to have a lot of great guests coming up, and I think you're going to really love who we have in store for you this year. And also we have a lot of other great surprises for our listeners and our email list and our Insiders Club. So if you have not signed up for that, please do, and you'll get notified with all the great stuff we've got coming here for the Insiders Club this year. That's the show for this week. Thank you again for joining us on Money Tree Investing Podcast. My name's Kirk Chisholm, Wealth Manager of Innovative Advisor Group. We don't just manage your wealth, we make your life better. You can find more about me at innovativewealth.com. And of course, you can find me every week here on this show. You can also check out our show at Money Tree Investing Podcast. On our website, you'll have access to the show notes, resources, and the archive shows. Please remember to subscribe on our YouTube channel for immediate access to the new shows when they're released. When you subscribe to the show, it allows us to get access to some of the top minds of investing in personal finance. While you're here, please leave a comment and question if you want us to address it on the show. Have a great week ahead, and remember, no one will care about your money like you do, so invest in your life.